The gym smelled of sweat and ambition, a place where dreams were forged in iron and grit. I stood frozen, my heart pounding louder than the clanging weights, as his hand lingered on my shoulder, a touch that felt less like guidance and more like a confession. I hired Ethan Caldwell to fix my body, but the way his eyes held mine suggested he might break my heart. My name is Lucas Harper, a 28-year-old graphic designer from Portland, Oregon, who'd spent too many years hunched over a laptop, letting my body soften like clay left in the rain. I was tired of feeling invisible, tired of the mirror mocking me. So I signed up at Iron Pulse, a sleek gym in the heart of the city, and got paired with Ethan, a trainer with a reputation for transforming clients. His chiseled jaw, piercing blue eyes, and easy smile made him look like he'd stepped out of a fitness magazine. But it was his intensity that hooked me. From our first session, he didn't just train me, he saw me. "Push through, Lucas," Ethan said that first day, his voice steady but warm, like he believed in me more than I did. We were working on deadlifts, and I was struggling, my legs trembling under the barbell. His hand grazed my lower back to correct my form, and I swear the air thickened. It wasn't just the weight making my pulse race. His touch was firm, deliberate, but there was something else, a softness, a hesitation, like he was testing a boundary neither of us had named. Portland was a progressive city, but I wasn't out. Not really. I'd grown up in a small town an hour away, where different was a dirty word, and I'd carried that shame like a backpack I couldn't unzip. I told myself I hired Ethan to get strong, to reclaim my confidence, but every session blurred the line between professional and personal. He'd linger after workouts, asking about my life, my art, my late-night sketching, the way I'd get lost in a song. I'd deflect, scared to let him too close, but his questions chipped away at my walls. By week 3, I was hooked, not just on the workouts but on him. Ethan had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. One evening, after a grueling session, he suggested we grab coffee. "To talk about your progress," he said, but his smile hinted at something more. We ended up at a cozy cafe near the Willamette River, the city lights dancing on the water outside. Over steaming mugs, he told me about his life. How he'd left a corporate job in Seattle to chase his passion for fitness. How he'd always felt like an outsider despite his polished exterior. I wanted to tell him I understood, that I'd spent my life hiding parts of myself, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I asked, "Why'd you become a trainer?" His eyes softened, and he leaned closer, his knee brushing mine under the table. "Because I know what it's like to feel trapped in your own skin," he said. "I want to help people break free." My breath caught. It wasn't just his words. It was the way he looked at me, like he saw the parts I'd buried deep. The next session, everything changed. We were alone in the gym's stretching room, the mirrors reflecting every angle of our movements. Ethan was guiding me through a hip flexor stretch, his hands on my thigh, adjusting my posture. His fingers lingered, tracing the muscle with a gentleness that felt like question. I froze, my heart a drumbeat in my chest. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He didn't pull away. Instead, he stepped closer, his breath warm against my ear. "Tell me to stop," he said, his voice low, raw. I didn't. We stood there, inches apart, the air electric with unspoken truth. I wanted to lean in, to close the gap, but fear clawed at me. What if this was a mistake? What if I was misreading him? But then he touched my face, his thumb brushing my jaw, and the world narrowed to just us. "Lucas," he said, my name a prayer on his lips. I don't know who moved first, but suddenly we were kissing, desperate and hungry, like we'd both been starving for this moment. The kiss broke, and reality crashed in. I pulled back, my mind racing. "We can't," I stammered, thinking of the gym, the gossip, the life I wasn't ready to face. Ethan's eyes searched mine, hurt flickering in them. "Why not?" he asked, his voice steady but vulnerable. I didn't have an answer, not one that made sense. All I knew was that I'd spent my life running from who I was, and Ethan was the first person who made me want to stop. That night, I lay awake, replaying the kiss, his touch, the way he'd said my name. I'd hired Ethan to fix my body, but he was unraveling my soul, and I wasn't sure I could handle what came next. The days after our kiss were a tightrope walk between longing and fear. I went to the gym, heart pounding, half hoping Ethan would act like nothing happened, half praying he wouldn't. He didn't. His eyes found mine the moment I walked in, and though he kept things professional, calling out reps, correcting my form, his touches lingered just a second too long, a silent reminder of what we'd shared. Portland's autumn was settling in, the air crisp, the city draped in shades of amber and crimson. I'd always loved this season, but now it felt like a backdrop to my unraveling. Ethan and I didn't talk about the kiss, but it hung between us, heavy and alive. During one session, as he spotted me on a bench press, his fingers brushed my wrist, and I nearly dropped the bar. "Focus, Lucas," he said, but his voice was soft, teasing, like he knew exactly what he was doing to me. Outside the gym, I was a mess. I'd always been good at compartmentalizing. Work in one box, family in another, my secret desires locked away tight. But Ethan was breaking those boxes open. I started sketching him in my notebook, his sharp jawline, the curve of his smile, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. Each stroke of my pencil felt like a confession I wasn't ready to voice. One evening, Ethan invited me to a local art walk, saying it'd be good for me to get out of my head. I agreed, telling myself it was just two guys hanging out. But as we wandered through galleries, our shoulders brushing, I felt the pull again. At one exhibit, a series of abstract paintings in bold reds and blues, Ethan stopped, staring at a canvas that looked like a storm of emotions. "This is you," he said, glancing at me. "All these colors, fighting to be seen." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. How did he see me so clearly? We ended up at a quiet bar afterward, tucked in a corner booth. The conversation flowed. Movies, music, the little things that made us who we were. Then, out of nowhere, Ethan asked, "Why do you hold back, Lucas?" His voice was gentle, but the question cut deep. I stared at my beer, the condensation dripping like my resolve. "I don't know how to be this," I admitted, gesturing vaguely between us. "I've spent my whole life pretending I'm someone else." Ethan reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "You don't have to pretend with me." His words were a lifeline, but they also terrified me. I pulled my hand away, muttering an excuse about needing air. Outside, the cool night stung my face, but it couldn't drown out the truth. I was falling for him, and it was tearing me apart. The next session was tense. I was distracted, dropping weights, missing cues. Ethan finally stopped me mid-squat. "Talk to me," he said, his voice firm but kind. "What's going on?" I wanted to tell him everything. How I'd grown up hearing slurs tossed around like jokes. How my parents still asked when I'd settled down with a nice girl. How I wasn't sure I was brave enough to be who I wanted to be. But instead, I snapped. Maybe this was a mistake. His face fell, and I hated myself for it. That night, I got a text from Ethan. "Meet me at the lake. 8 p.m. Please." I almost didn't go, but something in me, maybe hope, maybe desperation, pulled me to the waterfront. He was there, standing on a wooden dock, the sunset painting him in gold. "I'm not giving up on you," he said when I approached, his voice steady but raw. "But I need to know you're in this too." I opened my mouth to argue, to push him away, but instead, I stepped forward and kissed him. It was softer this time, less desperate, but no less intense. His arms wrapped around me, and for a moment, the world felt right. But as we pulled apart, I saw a figure in the distance, someone from the gym, watching. My stomach dropped. Portland might be progressive, but gossip travels fast, and I wasn't ready for the world to know. The figure at the lake was Jake, another trainer at Iron Pulse. By the next morning, whispers were spreading through the gym like wildfire. I felt eyes on me during my workout, heard hushed conversations cut off when I walked by. Ethan acted normal, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way he scanned the room like he was bracing for a fight. I wanted to disappear. I'd spent years building a life where no one asked questions, where I could blend in. Now, that was crumbling. I avoided Ethan's gaze, focusing on my sets, but my hands shook. After the session, he pulled me aside. "We need to talk about this," he said, his voice low. "People are starting to notice." "Notice what?" I snapped, louder than I meant. A few heads turned. Ethan's eyes softened, but he didn't back down. "Us, Lucas. They're noticing us." I felt like I was drowning. I mumbled something about needing space and left, my heart pounding. At home, I stared at my sketches of Ethan, the lines blurring as tears welled up. I'd always thought coming out would be a choice, something I could control. But now it felt like the world was deciding for me. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Heard you're doing great at the gym. Proud of you." The innocence of her words stung. She didn't know. No one in my family did, and I wasn't sure I could tell them. The next day, I skipped my session. Ethan called, but I let it go to voicemail. His message was simple: "I'm here when you're ready." I wasn't ready. I spent the day sketching, losing myself in the lines, but every stroke reminded me of him. By evening, I couldn't stand the silence. I drove to his apartment, my hands gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. He opened the door, his face a mix of relief and worry. "You okay?" he asked, stepping aside to let me in. I didn't answer, just sank onto his couch, my head in my hands. "I'm scared," I admitted finally. "I don't know how to do this." Ethan sat beside me, close but not touching. "You don't have to do it alone," he said. "But you have to decide what you want." Well, I wanted was him. But wanting him meant facing everything I'd avoided. My family, my past, myself. We talked for hours about his own coming out, how he'd lost friends but gained freedom, how it was worth it. His words were a lifeline, but they didn't erase my fear. When I left, he hugged me, his embrace steady and warm. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered. The next week was a blur. I went back to the gym, ignoring the stares, focusing on Ethan's voice guiding me through each rep, but the tension was building. Jake cornered me one day, his tone casual but sharp. "You and Ethan seem close," he said, smirking. "Careful, man. People talk." I brushed it off, but his words lingered, a warning I couldn't ignore. Then came the call from my sister, Emily. "Lucas, what's going on?" she asked, her voice tight. "Some guy from your gym called, Mom. Said you're involved with your trainer." My blood ran cold. "Jake." He'd gone behind my back, stirring up trouble. I stammered, denying everything, but Emily wasn't convinced. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" she said. I hung up, my chest tight, and texted Ethan, "We need to stop." Ethan didn't reply to my text. For 2 days, I avoided the gym, burying myself in work, trying to outrun the chaos in my head. But every quiet moment brought his face back, his smile, his touch, the way he made me feel alive. I was running from him, from myself, but I couldn't escape the truth. I was in love with him. On the 3rd day, I went to the gym, heart in my throat. Ethan was there, training another client, but his eyes found mine across the room. When his session ended, he walked over, his expression unreadable. "You meant that text?" he asked, his voice low. I wanted to say yes, to push him away for good, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I shook my head, my eyes burning. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted. He nodded, like he'd expected it. "Then let's figure it out together." He didn't push, didn't demand answers. He just handed me a water bottle and said, "Let's train." It was his way of giving me space, but also a reminder that he wasn't letting me go. That night, I called Emily. My hand shook as I told her the truth about Ethan, about me. She was quiet for a long moment, then said, "I just want you to be happy, Lucas. Whoever you love, that's enough for me." Her words broke something open in me, a relief so sharp it hurt. But the bigger hurdle was still ahead. My parents. I invited Ethan to dinner at my place, a small step toward letting him in. We cooked together, laughing over burnt pasta, and for a few hours, the world felt safe. But as we sat on my couch, his hand in mine, he asked about my family. I told him about my parents, conservative, traditional, the kind who'd never understand. "They'll hate me," I said, my voice breaking. Ethan squeezed my hand. "They might, but you're not living for them. You're living for you." The next day, Jake's gossip reached a breaking point. A client confronted me in the locker room, his tone dripping with judgment. "Didn't peg you for that type, Harper," he said. I froze, shame and anger warring inside me. Before I could respond, Ethan appeared, his voice calm but steel-edged. "Back off, Mike. His life's none of your business." Mike muttered something and left, but the damage was done. The gym, once my sanctuary, felt like a battlefield. I was ready to quit, but Ethan stopped me. "Don't let them win," he said, his eyes fierce. "You're stronger than this." He was right, but strength wasn't just physical. I had to face my family, my fears myself. I called my parents, my heart pounding, and asked them to visit. They agreed, oblivious to the bomb I was about to drop. The night before they arrived, Ethan stayed over. We lay in bed, his arms around me, and I felt a courage I hadn't known I had. "I'm ready," I whispered, more to myself than to him. He kissed my forehead, his breath steady against my skin. "I know you are." My parents arrived on a rainy Saturday, their faces familiar but distant, like a photograph I'd studied too long. We sat in my living room, the air thick with unspoken questions. I'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but when I said, "I'm gay," the words felt like they belonged to someone else. My mom's face crumpled. My dad's went hard, unreadable. "And I'm in love with someone," I added, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "His name is Ethan." Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then my mom spoke, her voice trembling. "Lucas, how could you not tell us?" It wasn't anger, not exactly, more like hurt betrayal. My dad said nothing, just stared at the floor. I told him about Ethan, about how he'd changed me, not just my body, but my heart. I told him I was tired of hiding, tired of living half a life. My mom cried. My dad left the room. I felt like I'd lost them, but I also felt free. Ethan was waiting at the lake when I went to find him, the same dock where we'd kissed. I told him everything, my voice breaking as I described my parents' reaction. He listened, his hand steady on mine, and when I finished, he said, "You did something brave today. No matter what happens, you've got me." We stood there, the water lapping softly, and I realized that love wasn't just about the rush. It was about this standing together in the aftermath. The gym gossip faded, or maybe I just stopped caring. Jake moved to another gym. The whispers died down. I kept training with Ethan, not just for my body, but for us, for the life we were building. My parents didn't call for weeks, but Emily did, checking in, bridging the gap. One day, my mom sent a text. "I don't understand, but I'm trying." It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was a start. Months later, Ethan and I went back to the lake, the place where it all began. The sunset was just as golden, the air just as crisp. He took my hand, his fingers weaving through mine, and said, "I'm proud of you, Lucas." I looked at him, at the man who'd seen me when I couldn't see myself, and I knew I'd made the right choice. Not just in hiring him, but in choosing him, choosing me. Love, I learned, wasn't just a moment. It was a fight, a choice, a promise. And as we stood there, the world stretching out before us, I knew I'd keep fighting for it, for him, for the life I was finally brave enough to live.